Hello, and welcome to another episode of the DevLab podcast. Today, we're joined by Elizabeth Ferrao. Elizabeth splits her work between product research and launching business product at C Spire. She started as a software engineer, moved into product, and now focuses on turning real customer conversations and AI-supported workflows into meaningful products. And we're really excited to welcome Elizabeth to the podcast today. So, Elizabeth, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Phil.
Awesome. Look, I think good place to start. Why don't you give us a quick overview of your path into technology and product, and ultimately what led you into the role that you're doing today?
Yes, of course. So quick breakdown. I started off as a software engineer at Timing, the media company, and I realized that I've done now 3 startup within the enterprises like media, finance, and now telecom. And I've been in product goodness for 8, 9 years. Um, after spelunking into the engineering side.
Yeah.
Um, and what I find really fascinating, that I think the common thread for my own personal experience is I really like talking to people, which is probably why as an engineer I switched into product. And I liked figuring out what are the insights and like what makes that person like really really interesting. Like we're just a collection of 1,000, 2,000 behaviors that we have normalized, and every person is an expert in something, and but they're using your product for a reason, and just trying to figure out like what is the job to be done that they are using your product for, and what are all the collections of other variables in this person's life that has made it that that product is the one that you're using. And so like I really love figuring out like what are all these data points, and then what are the insights that we can maybe build for. And I think that yes and is quite joyous to be able to go into behavior, and then into trying to see like what a prototype or an interesting product could be, and then trying to scale it, right? Like at the end of the day, like if you have enough behavior or positive indications, can you go and scale that product? So I don't know, just like the full life cycle, I find really awesome, interesting.
Yeah, look, curiosity, I think, is a sometimes underlooked skill. Maybe not underlooked these days. I think it's one of those things where we say, "Oh, curiosity is really underlooked," but everyone kind of says that now. So maybe it's getting its credit these days. But I suppose when you think about a product, right? One thing that unifies the users of a product is like clearly they all have some sort of similar problem because ultimately they've come to you to use that product. But could you give an example of like some of the nuance you find that between different users as to like you know um what are those kind of other data points or other elements that you kind of factor in to really think about how you differentiate different users?
Yeah, I mean, I think about my job right now at C Spire, and how for our 3 lines of business we have, we make the Wi-Fi. We make cell signal, right? So it's such a commodity, everyone has it, and yet the type of users, the type of people that I am speaking with, I'm talking to a variety of jobs, income status, the ways that they spend their time, and yet they're all using this one product, right? They're all using, and it's my job to like to take all of these very very curious lives and see if I can make something of it, something more joyful and something more uh useful for them. And so that's maybe where I would start there.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, how you kind of market yourself to different individuals, different groups. I think we started off with thinking about, a company value prop, but actually what you end up with is, multiple value props almost, and different value props to different segments, different value props that speak to different audiences in different ways, where they have those, they're all using the same product, but they're using it for different needs, different end results, different end goals, ultimately. So look, a big part of your role involves that product research. So how do you approach discovery at scale across home, wireless, and business customers who all have these different needs, right? Like how do you
Yeah.
really tap into what they need?
Yeah. I mean, I love my job because it's just like such the end cycle. It's like very, very B2C and then B2B to C, and then like it goes through the whole trifecta. How do I approach it?
Yeah. So how do you kind of approach discovery across like all those
Yeah.
different mediums and different types of customers? Like, how do you, I suppose, yeah, how do you discover the information in the first place? Maybe the practicalities of it, but then how do you kind of piece that all together?
Oh my goodness. I started with,
Big question.
like it's, uh, this is actually something I've been thinking a lot about, especially as I have tried to teach our product managers more about not just the customer interviews, of course, but like the insights that we're getting, and then how do we turn that into an opportunity, and how do we experiment with those opportunities and prototype, and then ultimately decide what experiments uh, to pursue, and then to scale. And I'm a really big fan of the Teresa Torres continuous discovery fundamentals, and I previously was doing just a lot of mom test, take people out for coffee. Like that has been the thing I've done for the last 10 years. Is hey, can I buy you a $5 latte and pick your brain for 30 minutes, and then just like have my notebook in front of me, and uh, that has been my very unscalable approach, but it tends to be fine when you're dealing with in person. And for B2C conversations, when you're dealing with more B2B, I think you need a little more regiment around it, a little more warm interest from your sales folks, if that is an opportunity. So the tooling, like, we use a variety of tools, and my goal has always been to set up continuous conversations with our customers for our product managers, and for myself. So how do we always make sure that we have an interview on our calendars already? um so it's always more cumbersome to try to move an interview. If it's already there, you're not going to move it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, the next topic I wanted to touch on, you gave me a really nice segue in there. Like you've touched on prototyping, and obviously prototyping has become incredibly fast, but understanding customers often isn't. Like, what does that gap look like day to day for a product team?
My gosh. This is something I think a lot about, especially, uh, there's been a couple of really powerful talks that have shaped how I think about the discovery side and then the development side. The discovery, the prototyping, and then the development side. And I think about, like, our job as product managers is to take all of these insights and turn them into something valuable, and something that obviously impacts the business, something that impacts our customers. And yeah, on the prototyping side, like uh I found that it it's been very unscalable. It's harder, of course, to go and find a customer to talk to than it is uh to prototype. Like I can pull up Lovable right now, right? I can pull up a number of prototyping tools and just like start experimenting. But what I'm counting on is my own personal expertise with our customers. And so at the end of the day, I think a lot about the moat that myself and our product managers are building, and our moat being customer understanding. I know our wireless customers very well. I know our home customers and our B2B customers really, really well. And that's why I'm able to build products that work and scale for them. And so that's like the unscalable answer, is like talk to a lot of customers and keep talking to them. I know a lot of product managers been at companies for 1, 2+ years, and they're like, yeah, yeah, it's fine. Like I've done some customer interviews. Like I know this segment, and I guess I have a little bit more of like, this segment is constantly moving. We're humans. We are constantly finding new data points, new things to spend our money on, new ways to solve old problems. Like we are constantly evolving. Um, Maybe our thoughts don't change, but like the products that we're using changes, and how we go about using all of our different products change. So I don't know. I think that just the start at the very beginning has always been the unscalable talk to a human.
Yeah, for sure. And do you think is there, I suppose, a challenge in, if you are sharing prototypes, do you feel like prototypes are almost like a leading question because you're kind of setting the
Yeah.
tone with like a solution, perhaps? So do you feel like there are almost certain checks and balances? Do you feel like there's a certain amount of discovery you have to have done up front before you can then go to prototype, or actually sometimes is having that tangible example, even if it is a little bit leading early in the process, like really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, right? Like at the end of the day, we're forcing behavior. We're
Hmm.
forcing an ask. Are you going to pay money for this thing? Are you going to use this thing or not?
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer for this, Phil, because like this is like the quintessential question, right? Like
Yeah.
we're spending a lot of time in product, like talking to humans, and then we create all these insights and opportunities from them. And then we can build a prototype now really, really fast. But does the prototype change your behavior? And does the optionality change your behavior or thought sequence um, because this is now a possibility, are you able to take advantage of it? And um, I don't know if I have a great answer for this. Like I think a lot about beta tests, how we can like just get really willing group of early adopters, especially for B2B mid-sized large businesses, and just have them. I think it very, very much depends on the type of person you're pitching, right? Like if you're talking to a business and a business purchases something, that's going to be a much larger weight to them trying to use a tool, even if it's a prototyping tool, than like a consumer who is just like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I'll try this thing, and then like I don't need, I'm not going to use this. Yeah, that's not a great answer, but like that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, no, we're not here to have all the answers for sure. It'd be really boring if we had the answers to everything. So no, I think often it's more about the discussion and exploring the topics. And look, I think that there probably isn't a defined answer to that, right? Like, there'll be instances where, yeah, for sure, you want to continue with that discovery before you start to set the tone with prototypes. There'll be other times, I'm sure, where actually the right option is to maybe stimulate some of that thought with some prototypes. Sometimes, showing people what they don't want to use might actually be the best way to get them to kind of help define what they do want to use. So again, even that prototyping session can then start a very interesting discussion, I'm sure. Um, Look,
Yeah, I
the
was
next
thinking about
question.
that.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say I was thinking about that recently about how even though like my products as a working for a telecom company are commodities, everyone has to have them. How in some ways, I think our goal in product is to elicit a really, really strong reaction both ways. I love it or I hate it. But that's not the ball game that a lot of commodities or a lot of like everyday kind of products are in. Everyday products are in the business of I don't know, we're the garbage collectors or the real estate managers. You only notice us when something goes wrong, right? Like otherwise it's just kind of like it works and that's the fact of it.
Yeah,
So
the unsung heroes of the tech world for sure. Um,
99% invisible. Yeah.
Look, we're gonna push the AI button next. The big red AI button that gets pushed in any podcast that we do these days. Yeah, we can't avoid talking about it. So look, where do you think AI like genuinely improves product research, and where do you think teams perhaps overestimate the impact or the possibility?
Yeah, there's a lot of admin. There's a lot of admin in, like, setting up a coffee and then, all this the notes and what you do with them, and are they answering the right questions, and then what are you actually able to make from it. So like what I've been experimenting with on the AI lovely workflows is just can I automate some of the admin. Show rates are obviously a big thing here, especially when you're working with I was going to say a properly trained researcher. I'm a little more. I'm on the product side. I'm far more duct tape and can I just invite you out for a coffee? And but if we're doing this at scale, then show rates are really big. And how do you remind people to show up on time? Like that's a big aspect here. The follow ups, the incents. So that's what I've been mostly using it for is like mapping out my workflow and then trying to incentivize, like make sure that every piece of the product research of like I have a customer interview, I have 3 on my calendar. the only thing that I, Elizabeth, am responsible for is showing up for that 30-minute segment and then like a 10-15 minute thing after of synthesizing my notes. I don't need to worry about the emails ahead of time or the follow-up afterwards or incenting them. That's what I'm trying, the thing that AI, the bright, shiny North Star for me, has been that I think someone said, 20% of the job we always hate. There's always like admin portion. And then like presumably most of us like have a job that, 50 to 80% we actually really, really like. And I'm trying to automate that 20%.
Yeah. That's freeing you up to do the human parts of the role, right? And so what you're not necessarily talking about is AI taking on the interviews and actually doing that research. I mean,
No.
what's your opinion on that? Do you have a strong opinion either way on whether that is something that companies should be looking at or will be looking at in the near future?
Yeah. I I've actually been considering whether AI puts me far more, I mean, and I know that there's lots of discussions around this anyway, of like AI puts me in a very editing and passive role.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's my job as a senior person who's been doing this for many, many, many years like I definitely use Claude to start to generate couple of those customer conversations, customer interview discussions, but then I take that question and I like run with it, right? Like, well, I'm starting off with like maybe 5 questions, and they're always going to be like the same basic, like, what's your job to be done? Like, what's the story you want to tell? Walk me through how you use this product day in the life. Like it's always going to be kind of the same basic ones, but it's my job to like dive in, which makes a very unscalable interview format, right? Like, because when I look across 5 interviews, then like I've asked a variety of questions. And it's not like in a pretty little like, oh, here are the columns and here are the answers. Um, and so I really am then counting on my notes and I'm counting on my colleagues' notes for us to like very, very much discuss. That was very interesting. That is the insight or the opportunity we want to take from that. So yeah, I uh, there's also like a lot of AI synthesis of your notes, and I find that it is very uh I think you just like really, really need a human who knows your business in the loop. Like even when you're uploading all the stuff to the AI about your business, like it doesn't know your business. It doesn't know your customers. And I think that that's like the part that I'm always like very, very centered on. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I'd agree. Yeah, I think AI note takers for meetings are really useful, right? Having that transcript and having that summary afterwards. But yeah, when you're trying to get into the weeds, it's crazy how often even just a small change to the context, or like a small change to the wording of your understanding and what you're trying to communicate, like actually when you then get that kind of regurgitated AI version, it's kind of like 90% of what you spoke about, but actually one of those killer points or one of those really interesting learnings is just kind of missing or is being diluted amongst other points. And I think, yeah, for sure, that's where that human in the loop element absolutely needs to be there. I think in terms of AI interviewers, things like that, I think, um, again, I think it depends on the context. So we've actually played with some AI calling agents for various different use cases. So actually, when you're thinking about them more as like a really smart notification, it works really well, right? The AI can give someone a call. It can really personalize information to them. If you have like a good basis of data, which we do on Hacker Job, we've got information on every candidate. We know their interview. We know which company they're interviewing with. We know the time of the interview, so it can really kind of communicate in a very nice personalized way. It's when you get into the back and forth that again you then need that kind of direction towards the human. And this has always existed, right? If you think about the logic of chatbots and things like that, right, which have been with us for a long, long time now, right? You kind of get to the point where you've explored all of the different FAQs and different answers it can give you, and then eventually it's going to direct you towards a human. And I think that's kind of where we're still at with AI at the moment, in that for some of these upfront, as you say, those 20% admin lower level tasks, it's great, but you absolutely still then need that referral process through to the human when you get to a certain point when you need that extra complexity, or you need to be able to ask that killer follow-up question, or you need to be able to say, okay, great, but can we actually delve into that point versus just move on to your next question and move on to your next question, right? Because you're going to miss so much of that underlying information if you're not, you know, really kind of doing what a great product manager will do and really delving in and digging into an issue and understanding the pain and understanding the value. Is where I kind of think we're at with it now.
Yeah, like I always, even when I give it so much context, am very disappointed in like the information that is making it in a silo. Like it's always, and I'm like, I sat in on these like 5 meetings. I gave you all the transcripts. I gave you all the players, and I even gave you my notes from the 5 meetings. And yet, like for our business context, for our customer base, there's something like it just doesn't um I don't know, like it just doesn't feel like it hits the marks. At the end of 5 meetings, I'm gonna have like 1 to 3 like really, really big meaty opportunities that we should go down. And you're not gonna understand that based off of um and based off of I don't know where it like I have been thinking about like what else could I give it? Is it I've been thinking about the fact that for me, I've been at my current company for a little over 2 years. Is it I haven't recorded all the meetings that I've been in, right? Like how many other data points have I ingested and then like forgot, right? I think that's like so incredibly important. What other culture metrics or like business logic, like what have I forgotten that is and to make room for, oh, this is who my company is. And I'm not taking into account like all these 100 other variables. No, like we are these 3 things. Um and that's what I bring to every single meeting. And that's why I can have a very different lens. So I don't know, felt like I'm trying. I'm trying to give it like all everything, and yet there's always something that's a little bit off. And I hope in the future, I think for a lot of the admin tasks, I'm very I'm feeling empowered, and I'm feeling like it can take the admin tasks off my plate for for other for other tasks, for the also, that's not the part that I wanna give it, like, the creative work. I want some of it to be there. I think it's really good at, like, asking, "Hey, Elizabeth," like, you asked, like, the same 10 types of questions in every single other interview, and you forgot 5 of them this time. Oh, great. Amazing. Thank you for the checks and balance system.
Yeah, definitely. Or you can go back and forth on an idea, but then ultimately, yeah, it's then you taking that away. And as you say, right, we don't want to squeeze the joy out of work and end up, we get lumbered with the admin and the creative stuff we outsource. No, for sure. Like we want to be able to make sure that yeah, it's definitely complementing the interesting part of the role. But look, it's going to get better, right? If we looked a year ago, 2 years ago, we'd be a million miles away from where we are now. And I think, yeah, the capabilities and the new possibilities are kind of changing every single day. In terms of like understanding a customer, which is where we kind of started this conversation, right? And I think that is fundamentally, as you kind of detailed, like yeah the mo for all product managers is to really have that deep understanding of the customer and be that bridge between the tech side and the other part of the business and yeah, the problems that you're trying to solve for customers or the value that you're trying to deliver. Um, Again, this might be a question that doesn't have an answer, which I'd love it if it is, because I like throwing these sorts of questions out. But like, how do you know when you've kind of reached that level of understanding inside? Like, how do you know when you understand the customer? Is there a way to measure that understanding? Like, yeah, that really fascinates.
Yeah. What is the threshold? I would say that, I mean, we as humans are constantly evolving, and do we ever stop changing? Like, even for something as basic as, like, a gym product, the number of inputs every way, you're still at, like, January 1st, we know that you're gonna be hit with a ton of advertisements for New Year's resolutions, right? Um, and, mm, the I would say, like, the variables, the TikTok trends. that like are changing to make you want to do this, or your own personal incentives are changing, right? Like on a year over year basis, because of your family or your friends or whatever. So we kind of know, we're always going to know the broad strokes, especially if you've done enough customer interviews. And I think that this is where most product managers, after like 5, 10 interviews, are just like, like I got it. Like I know our customers. But I would say that we are very creative, and we're never gonna reach the threshold of I mean, now we're getting into the philosophical realm. Do we ever really understand a person? Do we ever really understand like a customer? And every customer is so different in how they approach their behavior. Yeah, I think that I'm a really big subscriber to the continuous discovery, because I think a lot of product managers end up tapping out after 5, 10, and they're just like, I know this subject matter, and I'm like, I don't I don't think you do. I think you need to have a little humility. I think we all need to have a little humility that we're never going to like completely understand the market forces or that person's family, or and people solve things in very, very creative ways, and there can always be another fascinating tidbit that someone gives you that sparks your own interest.
100%. 100, and, as you've said, right, humans are we are transient, right? Like we do change, our needs change over time. And not just that, the world around us changes, right? Like again, we've already kind of touched on AI, but things that were possible in terms of solutions today, like weren't possible a couple of years ago because we couldn't leverage this technology. So again, like the way you can approach problems also changes. And with the rise of AI, it's created new problems for people in their roles and things like that. So yeah, for sure, you can never kind of keep up with that. And actually really reminds. So I was on a panel event last night with Neil Turner, who is the CTO for Go Cardless, and he was talking about one of the challenges they faced in their kind of scaling journey is like, you start off with a really core team. This was about engineering, but I think it also kind of does relate to product, right? And these people have like lived and breathed the product during those early journeys, and they feel like they know every single bit around that product, around the users, around the problem. And then you start bringing new people in who are kind of bringing new ideas to the table and fresh eyes to the table. And there can be a little bit of, not necessarily hostility, but certainly a little bit of conflict between those two parties. And actually, what they ended up doing was really breaking those initial squads up and having those people be SMEs and experts within pods of newer people. So for sure, you're not losing that domain knowledge. You're not losing all of that institutional knowledge that they've kind of built up. But then also, asking them to open their eyes up to new possibilities and perhaps not getting so stuck in those initial kind of ideas that, are what got them to that initial point, I think is, really kind of relevant to this discussion as well.
And maybe that's exactly it, Phil, is it's not that person and their insight, it's how it impacts you, right? I am a different person today than I was yesterday. I'm thinking about different things. I'm evolving as a product manager, and I'm thinking about different opportunities. And so I think that like that customer interview is really powerful, because it's yes, like you're seeing one data point from one type of person. I'm sorry, you're seeing like 1,000 variables, and how that person has ingested all of those things in their life to come up to this interview and be really like, hey, here's 30 minutes of my time. But like, who are you today to be able to yes and what they're saying? And you're answering different questions today than you were yesterday, than you were last week. Like, our business context is constantly changing. And so, like, yeah, I find that it never gets boring. And maybe this is exactly where we had first started off with, like, what types of questions do we ask? What is AI pulling for us for the synthesis of information? Like, AI I think can be like a wonderful, wonderful tool, but like that all of that context of last week's business priorities versus this week's, the last week's feature analysis and roadmap, and here's the big questions that we're asking versus this week's, like it's all about how the customer that we're talking to, yeah, we're going to ask the same 5 basic questions, but like the 10 other questions that we ask are going to be very, very dependent on that week's business context.
For sure. I think, you make a great point around that, that really clinging to the continuous discovery model. I think, yeah, in an ever changing world, like you can't not do that for sure.
Yeah.
Final kind of topical question, and then I want to just, yeah, get a few takes from you. But I alluded there to kind of engineering teams, and that example I gave was really focused on engineering. Like, how can engineering teams and product teams be close enough together that there's great cohesion? The engineering teams really understand the problems and yeah, what has been discovered, without then really, I suppose, impacting their ability to go and deliver and actually build the thing, but also like impacting your ability to actually go and do that discovery. Like, how do you marry those two things up and make sure that there's good knowledge share between the two, and that the two teams work cohesively?
And I think we're talking a lot about that right now about product-led engineering and engineering-led product, especially if I can move a little bit and build a prototype based off of the insights I've heard, and engineering can sit in a little bit more on my customer interviews. Um, I always find that I always invite my engineers at least to the first like couple of customer interviews, because often it's a format that they've never interacted with a customer. Like, they've heard about it, but they've never actually interacted with the customer. And then sometimes, very often in my customer interviews, like, I'll throw them a question and say, like, and I'll have them, if possible, if they have like 2 hours ahead of time, like read like the mom test. So it's not like, well, would you use this product? Okay, no, that's not a great question. Very leading. Um, but I like to involve my engineers in my customer interviews, at least for the first couple, so that they understand it, right? We base our lives and our products that we're building. We're basing everything off our experience, and reading an AI transcript or a summary of what happened. Like, no one has ever felt, oh, I was at that meeting because I read that transcript. No one has ever said that.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how I try to bridge it, is I have them sit in on a couple, and it and then after like 2 to 3, they've gotten the rhythm. Um, but I also find that it helps their engineering workflow, because they're answering questions. They're asking questions and answering questions, and they're trying to figure out what's the most important thing in whatever needs to get built. Um, as am I. So we're just like constantly fielding questions and trying to make it not leading, and trying to um and of course it's not very A to B, right? I'm asking questions that are trying to elicit a story. I'm trying to ask about the day-to-day experiences, and from that I'm trying to extrapolate behavior. So it tends to not be at nearly as directional as most people, especially engineers, as our questions tend to be, where they're very specific, but we're extrapolating. But yeah, that's how I've been doing it. I'm curious if you have any other ways that are more scalable.
I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. Again, this came up last night as well, and really, I think a lot of the different leaders. So we had, again, Neil was there from Cardless. There was Todd from Vanta. There was Dion, who works for Transport for London. So, like, different scales of companies, and really a lot of the answers were similar, right? Like, you have to find that balance between taking up too much time from either team. So finding opportunities, like, you've already got that meeting booked in, right? That's no extra time out of your day. Yes, the engineer is going to come and sit in on it, but they're not going to sit in on every one. You're going to bring them along to enough to get enough of a flavor. And actually, that's a good one. Before I do go on, what was their feedback on that? Like, did they feel like they got value from it?
Yes, they definitely feel like they get value, and their job is not to sit in on all the customer interviews, right? So it's not like they're like, "Oh, yeah, next week, like, involve me in all the following ones from here on out." But I do find that, especially when we're dealing with a very difficult engineering question, that me being like, "Hey, let's go just talk to John, let's talk to Jane." Like, let's get an outside perspective of, like, does that thing matter? Like, we're squabbling internally about, like, some sort of speed thing. But does the person actually care? Um, And I find that that breaking up a fight between product and engineering sometimes is just as easy as like, actually, let's just go run a customer interview right now.
Yeah.
And let's just get a couple of stories of when that actually has impacted this person. And then I find that it just helps all of us get out of the internal machinery and out of our heads and out of the questions that we're asking. We're like, oh, actually, I have a totally different perspective on that than I did 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, for sure. It makes it far more tangible. It humanizes it. And then, yeah, I guess just to finish off, I think really it is, and this, to be honest, goes beyond product and engineering. And I think really goes out into, filters out into the entire business when you think about your customer facing teams and everything. And it's really just having the business actually focus on like the end result, the end user, the problems you're solving, the value you're delivering versus the solution. So like really having everyone focused on like the what and the why. And then the how is everybody's job, right? The how is everybody's day-to-day job. Everyone has to work out like how we're going to get there, and everyone has different responsibilities. And for sure, like that's where the nuance is. But that what and that why, that needs to be universal, right? We should all understand like why we're doing what we're doing and what it is we're trying to solve for our users. So like that's where the product managers insight is like crucial, right? In helping the best of the business to understand like what is it we're trying to do, why are we trying to do this, and then for sure it's that how where there's the big difference, right? Yeah, I'm going to trust you to go and get me from A to B, but this is A and this is B.
And I have said this to my teams many times, which is like if I wanted to go to Claude and ask how to build a I don't know, the telecom company, like it would give me the basics, right? Like every single AI is going off the same information right now. But it is your customer context and your business logic at the end of the day that creates your moat, that creates like what is actually pleasing to the humans that we're selling to, because the humans are the ones using the products, and we're building for humans that are constantly evolving and changing. And so I thoroughly and I'm very happy to be using AI to automate a lot of the admin portion, but I have not found joy or success yet in having it do the more creative aspects of the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only reason to do that really would be scale, right? Like, because the only
Yeah.
reason you then leverage AI is to have 1,000 interviews a day. But ultimately, like, what product are you going to book 1,000 interviews a day anyway, really? And actually, like, if you're having, 10 interviews a week with the right customers that have different needs, and you're being a bit tactical, you're maybe trying to make sure you're speaking to some of those edge cases, so you do understand some of the challenges that are perhaps less common. Like, you're probably still going to get that learning, right? I think AI, if you're talking about outreach, then yeah, for sure. If I've got 100 10,000 people that I need to reach out to, then yeah, leveraging automation, leveraging AI is gonna help me there. Actually, if I just really need to understand customers in depth, like whether I have AI do 1,000 interviews for me or I over the course of a year do 100 interviews, like you probably still end up in the same place. In terms of the learnings, they're going to be just so much deeper from your ability to, you know, dig in and ask those follow-up questions and ask those specific questions. So yeah, 100%. I completely agree. Look, appreciate we are approaching time. So look, penultimate question. If our listeners remember only one thing from this conversation, if they take one learning away around, the life and a day in the life of a product professional, like what do you think that one thing is? What do you think the most important point we've hit on is today?
Most important thing is to hear someone's voice. Hear your customer's voice. I think we haven't yet figured out how to allow the transcripts and the AI tools to create those markers for tone and speed and all of the 85-90% of nonverbal communication, the enthusiasm, the dismay, the frustration that we have not created. We don't have those markers just yet. So when you hear someone's voice and you hear how much they care or don't care, or like you are not able to like it just elicits a strong sense of joy, of frustration of whatever it's going to be. But like you have to hear someone's voice for that. That's not scalable.
Yeah, for sure. And as you say, beyond that, right, we've all been on meetings, right, where it looks like someone's kind of half asleep, and then you come on to a certain topic or a certain feature, and all of a sudden, the eyebrows go up, like they're sitting up a bit straighter, they're leaning into the screen, and it's like, okay, great, we've caught the attention here. What was it about that really piqued your interest, right? And for sure, that's missing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the joy, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is
no,
actually the
definitely.
joy. So,
Yeah. 100%. Awesome. Look, Elizabeth, that was all of the questions I had for you. Is there anything
I'm
else you wanted to share with the audience? Anything we didn't get the chance to cover? Anything else at all that you wanted to kind of get off your chest while we're here?
now I think that maybe like the one last thing I'll say is that Andrew Ng gave this really, really good YC Startup School talk a couple of months ago. And the thing that has stuck with me is that one of his managers has because of how fast the prototyping has been, asked for 2x the number of product managers to one engineer because there's so much more customer context, customer understanding, and so the traditional calculus for product engineering has always been 1 to 5, or like I'm actually writing an article right now on like offshore versus onshore engineering teams because onshore we tend to do a lot more collaboration. But I find that fascinating that like the mode that we are going to continuously end up being in is, do you understand your customer? Because AI doesn't. Do you as a product manager, as a senior, mid-level, like whatever your level is, do you understand your customer? Um, yeah, and I find that so fascinating. I find it really fascinating looking at other people's products and being like, "Oh, I don't think they get it. I don't think they're building for the right type of person." Or maybe it's just not enough revenue for them. So I don't know. There's used products and then you have opinions on them.
Look, I think that's a really great piece of insight to finish with. And yeah, if you could share that link, I would definitely be
Yeah.
happy to make sure that's in the podcast description, because I think that is a bit of a revelation, right? I mean, we've definitely seen on Hack a Job, product management has been one of the areas that has certainly been a lot more resilient when it comes to the impact that AI has had on hiring. But yeah, really encouraging to hear that there is actually that drive to increase the ratio between product and engineering. And I think probably a lesson as well for engineers out there, right? Um, again, the ability of AI to write code today has been overemphasized and overhyped for sure. But like ultimately, I think it will get there quicker than it gets to the point of being able to understand a customer, to be honest. Like when we think about those hands-on technical skills, like I can see that path that AI is going to take to get towards that. Now, of course, there'll still be drawbacks. But those drawbacks, I think, will often come where the world of engineering and product meet, right? Like, okay, great, you can write some code, but does it actually solve the problem, right? Have we actually delivered the value we were trying to deliver to the user? So from an engineering standpoint, those softer skills, communication, that understanding of the user, definitely things I think to lean into if you are in the world of engineering, because as you say, right, there's a bit more of a moat there. It's a little bit more fortified. And certainly, yeah, we're a long way off being able to automate that sort of
That's the hope, right? So the AIs are take a
here
little
we are.
longer at figuring out what makes us human.
Yeah, 2 years time, we're all plugged into the matrix. Yeah, everything we said here was was a fallacy. Yeah. Hey ho. Awesome. Look, thank you so much for joining us today, Elizabeth. It's been an absolute pleasure to get your take on all these different topics and really delve into your approach to product management, discovery, and the impact of AI. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for making time, Phil.
Awesome. And yeah, you're welcome back anytime. So look, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you everyone out there listening. I'm sure you've very much enjoyed the episode as I have. This has been another episode of the DevLab podcast. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. And we'll see you back next time with another episode. Thanks.